Hello, this is Veronica Combs with Tech Republic. It's the end of the year. We're looking ahead to 2020. We're looking ahead to the next decade. And just like the rest of us, IDC is also looking ahead to figure out what's going to happen with all these new technologies we're dealing with. IDC recently released a report, Futurescape, Worldwide Digital Transformation 2020. There's 10 predictions in the report. And today we're talking with Shawn Fitzgerald. He is the Research Director of Worldwide Digital Transformation Strategies. Welcome, Shawn. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Veronica, for hosting me.
So you have a quadrant, and you have all your 10 predictions in that quadrant, and I wanted to talk today about the ones that are in the upper right corner, so high cost, high complexity. And one of the more interesting predictions was about culture and how that's going to have to change. And that's kind of an unusual prediction to talk about if you're talking about technology. But I thought it was also curious that it was going to take a while and it was going to be kind of complex to make the changes in the enterprise to support these digital transformations. So if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Sure, Veronica, and great observation. Culture is one of those things where, to your point, when we think about predicting the future in technology, it's really about adoption and behavior around those technologies. So obviously, creating a tech-friendly type of organizational culture where people can embrace these new technologies, especially because change is happening at a pace and scale and level that we've never really seen before in business or society for that matter. So making change safe for these organizations and how employees operate and do their work and leverage these technologies is a fundamental part of the technology actually becoming just the way work's going to happen both today and into the future. So, we often look at how companies measure themselves, how they monitor employee performance. And quite frankly, it's traditionally been either, an annual or semi-annual review. But because this technology is moving so quickly and we're going to see augmented work through technologies, whether it's personal agents, Alexa in the office, if you will, people really need to understand that we behave differently. We need to get feedback differently. We need to understand our role in leveraging these technologies much more in real time than we ever have before. We used to have a saying when I was back in industry to go, to leverage technology without process and good discipline around it is to go zero to chaos at the speed of light. So if we can't manage change successfully, both at the individual, department, and overall organizational level, then we're just going to have chaos because these technologies are moving way too fast. They allow us to do things at scale like we never could before. So how people embrace those and how the management systems evolve to encourage that is all really important to making sure that these technologies not only are implemented properly, but companies are able to get the value from them.
And I'm guessing that this is an easy part to skip, right? Here's the tool, now go use it, as opposed to here's the tool, here are the weird parts about it, thinking about that culture part and not just skipping over it. Is that how you're advising companies to be deliberate about this?
Yeah, process and technology, right. Those are relatively straight shots. Of course, that gets complex if you're in high mark industries or have certain unique, security or information requirements. But quite frankly, most management systems really are uncomfortable with the squishy part, which is the people and the emotions, and quite frankly, how you get these interpersonal dynamics. If you think about companies with 50,000, 100,000 or more employees, I really need to be smart about the behavioral aspects of my management system for change. Because one, getting 100,000 people in an organization to work effectively together is difficult, even in the traditional management model. But it just gets, much more complex, and the difficulty explodes logarithmically when you start applying these real-time technologies to the work.
Right, right. And I think another one of the curious predictions to me was about ecosystem force multipliers, which is kind of a long way of saying collaboration. It seems like a lot of these technologies require 5 different companies or divisions to work together. Is that what you were getting at when you were talking about ecosystem force multipliers?
Yeah, there's absolutely measures and degrees of that. For what to kind of take a step back, we define digital transformation as transformed decision making with technology. So it's really about these new business models, information and empirical decision making at the core with speed, scale, and agility. And to do that, you really need to have a digital platform, which is an architectural reference model that we've defined and described and articulated here at IDC. And not just enough to have this platform for insights for yourself, but a large part of that data that's going to drive the empirical oriented business models of the future. A lot of that data doesn't reside within your organization. Your ability to extend out into ecosystems, whether that's customer facing markets or customer personas based on how they engage your products and services through various channels, as well as digging back into your supply side ecosystem, because you need to understand, track and trace ability of products and other components that come into you delivering product and service value. We see this with blockchain as a great example in food safety and ensuring that we're getting, products that are safe, and blockchain technology is one way of conveying that information through these platform ecosystems to say that, these bananas are safe, they came from a good place, or we have other ingredients that go into processed foods that, don't have any bad chemicals or come from a place that, is either socially or politically unwelcome, depending on the types of goods and services.
Right, right. So maybe technology will help people learn to share a little more. That's my optimistic take on blockchain anyway. And I also wanted to ask about digital investments. That was one of the high cost, high complexity predictions. And is that making sure you're making the right bet, picking the right things, like one technology over the other?
Yeah, so, what tells us that digital transformation is still very early on and maturing, and there's still a lot of opportunity for both end users to adopt technology and vendors to supply hardware, software, and services around these technologies, is the level of investment. So we see from 2020 through 2025, I believe it is, we see over $7.4 trillion of direct investment. So that tells us it's very big in terms of the spend. But at the end of the day, right, if I think about digital technologies and their application to business outcomes, which is how we define and describe the real value of digital transformation at IDC, it's about realizing the return on those investments, and however you choose to measure that, whether it's a certain percentage or share of your business is coming through these digital marketplaces, again, benefiting from those ecosystem force multipliers we just spoke about a minute ago, or the other aspects of just realizing benefit from investment. So, spending money is easy, but getting the value out of that is the hard part. And that actually threads back to even to the culture aspect of it, is that, I can put technology in place pretty quickly, especially with these as a service offerings from the cloud and other non-on-prem type of offerings that we see more and more of in business and in society. But to get the value, right, I need people to behave and processes to take advantage and be able to scale what that technology brings, as far as, the automation and the leveraging of things like cognitive computing and AI to get rid of a lot of that manual transaction work. So the spend is easy. It's the value realization that's going to take a lot more time, because, again, we used to think about change management of people, process, and technology. I would articulate that you need to add data and governance to those change management elements, because, again, data is at the heart of digital, because you're making decisions based on clear information as opposed to gut management. And that's a bigger lift.
So people have to change, processes have to change, partners have to change. Do you think the next year will be even more challenging than the last few, or do you think some of these? So sometimes I think that, and sometimes I think we're a little bit more used to things like AI and artificial intelligence and assistance coming around to help us. Is 2020 going to be even harder for businesses to transform, or we made it to the next phase maybe that's a little bit easier?
Yeah, I think, the bar just keeps rising, and it gets more complex. And, as I mentioned, governance is an important aspect of change management because of the complexity. These digital technologies, companies are ultimately going to all have them. How they choose to kind of stack the Legos that are those technologies in a unique and meaningful way is going to be, I think, one of the, sustaining and differentiating benefits or detriments, if they get it wrong. So I think it continues to be more difficult. Our own research shows from our maturity benchmark that less than 4% of companies worldwide have become what we call level 5 digital disruptors or those most advanced digitally transformed type of entities. And digital transformation is not an end game. Think of it as a level of fitness. Do I compete at the local 5K turkey trot and Thanksgiving just around the corner here in the States? Or am I a world-class athlete who's, breaking the 2-hour mark in the New York Marathon? But the race never ends, right? It's just I can either get more fit or if I get it wrong, I'm actually, off pace and falling further behind the majority of companies I'm trying to compete with in these markets.
Right. Well, do you have any last advice for companies who want to level up? Maybe they're not at 5, but if they're trying to go up one step, do you have any advice to share for 2020?
I do, and it's outside of our predictions, but it's another piece of research. We just got back from the field with about 2,200 companies that we surveyed globally. And what was interesting, we asked them which functions were most critical for transformation, and IT was clearly the largest, but not the only one. It's a multidiscipline, multifunctional effort. But what was interesting, we asked the following question: what is the function that's actually actively impeding your transformation today? And surprisingly, the largest single response wasn't IT, it was strategy. So get your strategy right, and everything will follow. But if you don't have your strategy right, you're a flat bottom boat in a crosswind. You're going to go everywhere, and you're not going to get to where you want to be.
Well, thank you very much, Shawn, for joining us today, and we'll hope for smooth sailing for 2020, at least with a good strategy in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. Have a great day.